Hey guys, welcome back. I wanted to talk about this piece of anxiety and panic that we don't really look at very often in this conversation. The shame around it all, the shame around having anxiety, having panic attacks, having a phobia, having something in your life anxiety related, and then the undercurrent of shame that just sort of follows you around. I remember driving was always a thing for me. This feeling of anxiousness, this feeling of anxiety or even panic around certain driving situations, big bridges or big interstates like I-95 or when it was raining at nighttime on an interstate, even if it was a smaller interstate. I just had this constant anxiety. And if I knew I had a trip coming up and I was going to have to drive, the anxiety, that piece, yes, that sucked. It sucked to have the physical anxiety. But what sucked worse was the constant story of what the hell? Why can't I be normal? Why can't I just be regular and just get in the car and drive to, let's say, Virginia on I-95, like normal, regular people? This was the story that plagued me. And the more I started talking to other people about their anxiety or their panic attacks or their phobias, yeah, the phobia itself or the panic sucked. I get that. But what everyone I talked to said was the part that hurt the most was the shame. The what's wrong with me? What the hell? Why can't I just be regular? Why can't I just be normal like everyone else? I thought it was just me. I thought I was the only one for years. I remember, gosh, for 20 some years now, I've been taking these annual amazing beach trips with all my girlfriends. And I remember early on, I would always figure out a way to kind of get out of being the driver, just being a passenger. And, I would come up with some reason that I couldn't be the driver and I needed to catch a ride. Because the idea of being stuck in a situation on a major interstate with like a rainstorm that was unpredicted or extra traffic or semis on the road. Like the idea that I would be in this situation with a car full of moms, I couldn't do it. I could not do it. The thought of that created such panic, but more than the panic, the part that hurt was the constant background story. What a loser. You're such a loser. Look at these are the 13 women all volunteering to drive. They're normal. They're regular. What is wrong with my brain? What is wrong with my nervous system? It was just this constant shame. And then trying to do things so people wouldn't know that I was anxious. God, it was like a full-time job. And the shame of it all, that's what hurt. That's what kept me in suffering. Not driving somewhere, it's just not driving somewhere. Whatever, fine. It was the whole extra story of how it's ruining my life and how I can't be normal and how I'm never going to be normal and how I'm not going to be able to do things regular people do. How I can't be as functional as somebody else. Like all the guilt and the shame and the regret, and then the trying to maneuver so no one finds out because then I'm an even bigger loser. Anyone who has shame, I mean, anyone who has anxiety or panic or phobia knows what I'm talking about. And if you have a habit, an addiction, something, some pattern in your life. I was just listening to someone yesterday who I love so much on Amy Johnson's call talk about his pattern of rage and how rage is ruining his life. And he doesn't want to be full of rage. He doesn't want to lash out and yell at people and scream at people. And he hates himself for it. And you could feel the shame that he is carrying, like the biggest wet lead blanket on his shoulders, weighing him down. The shame, the regret. And then I talked to someone else who was talking about her habit And she's so frustrated because the habit, this overeating habit, isn't stopping. And she's doing all the right things and taking all the right classes and reading all the right things and white knuckling and gripping and using her willpower. And she's so full of shame. And so the last few weeks in preparation for a course I'm getting ready to teach, I've been studying shame. This whole idea of what is wrong with me? Why can't I be freaking normal? Why can't I just do XYZ? Or why can't I just stop doing XYZ? Why? And the shame that is so universal for anyone who's been in a situation of anxiety, panic, phobia, habit, addiction. You know what I'm talking about. And my guess is you would love to find some freedom around that shame. One of the coolest things I began to see, and interestingly, in hindsight, I saw this before, but I didn't understand what I was seeing. It was when I was driving. I think I was driving to either Virginia or Maryland. I was driving on I-95. I remember that. I was on I-95 and I was having all my usual panic, anxiety, gripping the steering wheel, waiting to see if I was going to pull off at an exit, pull off on the shoulder, the spinning. And then on top of it, what the hell is wrong with me? Why can't I be normal? And as insights happen, I didn't choose it. Of course I didn't. But somewhere along I-95, there was just this whoosh. And I wasn't even in this conversation or exploration yet. It just hit me. My grandmother, who passed away, my grandmother Jenny, who passed away back in 2010, also did not like to drive, especially on interstates or big roads or bridges. She had a lot of anxiety around it. And I knew that. I never judged her for it. It was just a thing to me. In this one trip, this was years ago, I was driving and I was, anxious and I was feeling all the feels of anxiety, panic, shame. And then I just had this like download of my grandmother, who I still feel to this day, and I still have conversations with to this day. And this was after she had passed. I had this sort of download sensation of her coming to me and saying, "Hey, Missy, I never quite mastered this panic, anxiety, shame thing during my time here on earth. Could you just hold it for me? Could you just hold my anxiety? Would you do that for me?" And there was just this unbelievable peace. Now, the anxiety was still there. My knuckles were still white, and I still had the racing heart as I was driving. But there was just this melting away of the shame because I never felt shame from my grandmother, who had the exact same anxiety. I had nothing but absolute love for her, admiration, respect. She was amazing. She could do no wrong. But the exact same anxiety and panic in me felt shameful. So when this presence of my grandmother showed up and she said, "Hey, can you just hold this anxiety for me?" I just never figured out what to do with it in my lifetime. The shame melted away. And it was amazing how my experience of panic changed. I still, at almost 54 years old, I have a hot running nervous system, is what I call it. My nervous system will still get really ramped up. It still gets anxious about things. It still has panic about some things. But my experience of it now is radically, radically different. I don't consider it suffering anymore. I consider it a nervous system doing what a nervous system does. And apparently this one gets really revved up about certain things, but who cares? Who cares? I didn't choose this nervous system, and I certainly don't choose anxiety or panic. And it's Amazing what can happen when you wake up to the fact that you're not the chooser of your phobias and fears, your habits. I love this whole conversation. I love studying how the brain works because it seems to me that the one common trait in all of our suffering, whether it's an addiction, a habit, rage, anxiety, whatever it is, the one common thread is this idea of shame. Somehow I did it. Somehow I'm holding this in place. Somehow I'm the one that can't be normal, regular, live a regular life. That linchpin, that one story that holds all the suffering in place, absolutely can be seen for what it is, and it can dissolve. And when shame dissolves, when we're not holding on to the stories of I could have done better, I should do better, what's wrong with me, what the heck, why can't I be normal? All those, which are very universal, they're not personal, as those can begin to be seen through. And as behaviors and anxiety, habits, addictions can be seen through a fresh lens, not a lens that has been clouded with shame. It's amazing what can fall into place. Experience changes, but even more than experience changing, which is awesome, you get to start seeing a much greater truth about who you are, what you are, how amazing and limitless and timeless you are. And pretty soon, the fact that the shame is gone is just the booby prize. I hope this helps. I'll be talking a little bit more in office hours this week about this whole shame cycle that holds anxiety, the experience of anxiety in place. And I'll be talking in office hours too. And I might put something in the show notes. I'm not sure if I'm ready to put it in yet about the course coming up in March, which will be taking a look at all of this, how the mind creates this amazing story of shame that locks everything else in place, seemingly. I hope this helps a little. There's a lot of freedom to be seen in this. I love you guys so much. I hope I see you in office hours. Bye.